Do you want to know how you can position yourself in the marketplace to make sales easier so you're not doing more? You're going easy, easy, easy? Then this episode is for you. Hello, Sales Nation, and welcome to today's episode, The Salesman Podcast. On today's show, we have Alice Heiman. You can find out more about Alice over at aliceheiman.com or smartsalestips.com. That's her blog. On today's show, we're diving into positioning, how you position yourself, how you position your product, and we dive into the economic climate and a whole lot more. This episode goes deep. And so, with all that said, let's jump right in. Alice, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Will.
More than welcome. I'm glad to have you on. We're going to dive into a topic today, which I think it can be somewhat of a high-level topic, but I think it's applicable as we before we click record, it's applicable to SDRs, BDRs, it's applicable to me, with my background in medical device selling, of doing the wholesale and competing against great competition, poor competition, similar competition. And we're going to be talking about how to position ourselves to get the sale. But we're going to take a fork in the road here, Alice, immediately with the first question. Which is more important for someone who's selling a complex B2B product? And this is somewhat dependent on product and the individual, I'm sure. But guns ahead, if you had to choose one or the other, which is more important? Your ability to position yourself as an individual, as a salesperson, as an expert, who's someone that is useful to have around for the organization that you're selling to? Or is it better bang for buck for us to work on positioning the product against the competition? Which one should we focus on first?
I believe you should focus on positioning yourself and your team. That's really where it starts, because we want to always start with building a relationship. You've probably heard this a million times. People want to buy from people they know, like, and trust. And I really don't care what you sell if I don't know who you are or know that you care about me, my goals, and what I want to accomplish.
Perfect. And I'm glad you said that because this is where my passion lies. It lies in getting the audience, Sales Nation here, to be able to differentiate themselves, because I think that's a bigger leverage point. It's a skill you can take from role to product to new product to different company. And it's something your personal brand is all wrapped up in this as well. So super open-ended question here, Alice. How do we go about positioning ourselves, perhaps even before we get in the room, to start developing this know, like, and trust before we sit down for that first meeting?
Well, one of the problems that we have right now is that the world is so small, but yet so big, right? So we have a company that has a product, and we think everybody knows who we are, and they know our brand, and they know what we sell, and they know all about us. But the truth is, most of the people that you're calling on don't. So part of the positioning is to start with getting people to know who you are. So you've got your target audience, and then you have to build awareness. Now, marketing and sales need to collaborate to do this. So building the personal brand is important, building the company brand is important, getting the information out there. But as an individual, what I can do to build my own brand is absolutely critical. And I think that many salespeople and business owners out there are not taking full advantage. Now, social media has been around a long time now. It's not something new anymore. And it is an easy way for us to show that we're experts in our industry. But I think that people are not capitalizing on this. So it doesn't matter what industry I'm in. I need to be a learner. I need to be a seeker of information. I need to be out there showing people that I'm a learner and that I share good information. So how do you do that? Well, you've got to stay on top of your industry news. You've got to stay on top of what's going on in your own company, of course. And then you have to stay on top of what's happening in your customers' industries. So maybe you're in the lighting industry and you're selling, to big commercial products, big commercial venues where they're going to buy lots of lighting, and it's a very complex sale, and there are a lot of people involved. Well, first you need to appear as a lighting expert, an expert in your field. So you're going to follow your own industry. But then your customers are in the construction industry. So you need to follow the construction industry and see what's driving that as well. Then you have to become an expert in each specific customer. So once you've made your list of who you're targeting, then you want to follow those companies, watch them, read about them, learn about them individually, learn about their industries, their challenges, and take the knowledge that you have and that you're gaining every day and apply that against it. So on social media, that's pretty easy because you can post great articles about your industry and maybe how it's affecting their industry. You can ask good questions that get people rallied around you and giving you answers about things that matter. For example, again, in the lighting industry, there's a lot of talk about how lighting affects productivity, how lighting affects people. There are cities putting in a lot of legislation about lighting. So you would want to be an expert in that, and you would want to share that information with others. And so that gets them to know you as an expert. And if you have targeted the right people on your social media and you're following them and interacting with them, they're going to see some of the good articles you're posting. And if you make a connection with them, you might even send them an article of interest. And that's how you're going to get them to know you. That's how you're going to build your brand. That's how you're going to show up as an expert online.
I was struggling to not interrupt then and interject and ask a load more questions. I was I was holding my lips shut and shutting up because there's so much to go here, Alice. And there's about 15 million follow-up questions to that. But the first thing that was really insightful for me, and so my background's medical device sales, endoscopy sales into the NHS, so kind of B2G really here in the UK. So just to paint more color on this, so I should be learning about what the NHS is doing. I should be learning what the private hospitals who are trying to somewhat compete with the NHS are doing. So that's kind of it's almost like my customers, it's almost my customer, what they are focused on. Then my customer is the surgeons, procurement teams. I need to then focus on if I'm dealing with urologists, the latest procedures, the latest equipment, what the latest training findings and research findings are for them. And then the third layer on that is, I guess I need to know internally what's happening within the medical device market to be able to serve them on that point. So that's a lot of kind of strings to be focused on. Is this something that when you are, working with business owners, entrepreneurs, and some salespeople as well, I guess, is this something that you see that is lacking, that perhaps they focus on one area and they don't? Because it's not spreading a wide net, it's spreading a very focused net, but in multiple areas. Is that something that people screw up on?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that what I see is people are casting too wide of a net. They're not targeting their audience narrowly enough, and they're not diving in deep enough. Because another add-on, which I might have mentioned or not, was you need to know your customer's customer, right? So let's go to medical devices again. So you're selling to a big hospital, but it's also the surgeons within the hospital. And you have to understand, so what would the hospital's goal be in bringing this new technology that you're selling to their surgeons? What can the surgeons do with this technology, and how does it affect their customer, which is their patient? And what are their goals for their patient, and what are their patient's goals? So value proposition becomes extremely important, but most salespeople don't have a good value proposition because they don't really understand the entire situation. What we do a very good job of at companies is teaching people our products and services. We give them tons of product training, hopefully. Hopefully they have enough product training, but I think that's the thing that we give them. We give them product training. And sometimes we give them a little bit of sales training about how our sales process works, but there's never enough sales training. Even for seasoned salespeople, they need to practice, they need to review, they need to remember. But what we definitely don't do is teach them about their customer's industry. We might teach them about our own industry, but I even see that lacking. So first, yes, you do need to know about your product and service. You do need to understand sales, the complex sale, positioning yourself. You need to understand your own industry. You need to understand the industry of your customers. You need to understand their company, who they serve, and how they're going to win by serving them. And you need to understand their customer and what their customer gets. And that whole package will make you a smarter, better salesperson and be able to have a better value prop and have a better conversation. And then you do beat the competition because you are positioned so much better, because you now understand what that surgeon is trying to accomplish in his or her life with these tools that you're providing for them and how their patients benefit from that. Now I can have a pretty deep conversation with the hospital saying, well, we know that your surgeons care about this, and that's why we developed the product this way. And we know that in the end, the patient will recover faster and will have a longer life and all of these things. And so that is what it's about. Not my product does this, my product does that, my product does this. No, that is not going to sell it. We have to go deeper and broader than that and have a true understanding of how our product is going to impact people's lives.
I've got to congratulate you here for a second, Alice, because 5-6 years of medical devices and chemical sales before that, 3 years of doing the podcast now, and over 400 interviews with the world's leading sales experts. I've interviewed business leaders, I've interviewed astronauts, I've just interviewed a UFC MMA fighter, kind of all kinds of data and knowledge coming from different perspectives. I've never really, truly, if I'm being honest, contemplated of, I know exactly what the surgeon wants. The surgeon wants more throughput of patients. So they want higher uptime of equipment. They want better images on the screen so they can do the procedures quicker. They clearly want better, whether it's the true real focus or not. They want better patient outcomes because clearly they don't want to get sued. But the more throughput they get, the more cash they're going to get, both internally and then in the private work as well. So that's high on the priority as well. But I've never really considered what the patient wants. So obviously the patient wants to go in, be anesthetized, and come out the other side and everything to be okay and the procedure to be a success. But they also want, there's different levels of success with surgery. I was selling laparoscopic surgical equipment primarily. We'll use the urology side of things. So I was selling the scopes that would go up through your urethra into your bladder, and you could shoot kidney stones and bladder stones from there. The difference between a good endoscope, both from on the patient, how traumatic it is physically on their body, and then how traumatic it is internally within them as they are literally shooting. It's crazy when you watch it. The surgeons are shooting lasers inside the patient. That trauma is something that by using a higher end, thinner diameter scope physically affects an actual person. Obviously, I'm in the operating room as they're doing the procedures, but I don't see the patient before and after. I'm not quizzing them and getting testimonials of their experience of how sore their willy was or wasn't either side of the procedure. But that is something that I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a surgeon other than a passing of, it's a thinner scope, it's going to help your patients. That is probably where we start the positioning, right? That is the most key parts because that's what they're going to care about the most, which is, I'm just going to pat you on the back for that, stroke your ego slightly, because that is a layer deeper than the success I've had in medical device sales than perhaps I ever went or needed to go. And that could have been the separation point between me and the rep next to me who's selling a somewhat similar product. That's the thing that tilts the sale in my direction, just that one insight, correct?
I believe it will, and I've seen it work. And I think that the less focused we can be on the product and the more focused we can be on the outcomes that the key people are going to receive, I think the better we are against our competition, and the more deep relationships we can build with people. Because again, with a doctor or even in construction or doesn't matter what field you're in, the person that you're selling to wants to win. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel good about the decisions they made. They want to keep their job. They want to keep their clients. They have a lot of things on their mind. And it's really our job to understand how they will win. And these surgeons will win when the procedures are easier, when their patients recover faster, when their patients have more confidence, when they have more confidence. So if they have more confidence in the tools that they're using to perform these surgeries, imagine the outcomes. And we know that happy people are more productive and more successful. And so if we look at the surgeon and say, how can we make them happier? Well, certainly they would be happier if the surgeries didn't take as long, if the outcomes were better, if the tools they were using did not fail. All of these kinds of things will make them happier and more productive. And then they'll get better outcomes, which means happier patients. We know happier patients heal faster. We know happier patients live longer. We know they'll come back and recommend their doctor. So all those good things come out, but we stay focused on this product does this and this product does that. And yeah, well, all the other products do that too. So I need to dig in and figure out what is going to matter to you and what is going to matter to the people that you serve.
Do we focus on products, features and benefits, which is not the traditional way of selling, but that's probably someone who hasn't gone through sales training, what they would naturally instinctively go towards. Do we focus on that because it's comfortable, because it's black and white, because we can read it off a piece of paper and give specifications? Or is it the prompt to us that perhaps we don't know enough about the industries and the verticals that we're working in because we're unable to make the connection between a physical feature or benefit and the end result? Is it almost a symptom that we haven't done enough research into our verticals?
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of sales in general is that we hire people who don't have a lot of experience in sales sometimes, part of it. Sometimes we hire people who have been in sales a really long time and are doing things a certain way. And really, the company has no expectation for you to go beyond product knowledge. When they hire you, they think, oh, this person knows how to sell. They know how to get positioned for a sale. Well, that is not a good assumption. Maybe they hire someone who was 300% of quota at their other company, and they knew how to get positioned for that sale, but now they're in a brand new situation and they don't necessarily know how to get positioned. So I think as company leaders, we assume too much when we hire salespeople. And what we need to do is, yes, of course, have them onboarded properly with, this is our company, this is our culture, these are our products and services. And that does get the salespeople excited. Wow, we have a cool product to sell. Our company's awesome. That's all really good, but it usually just stops there. We need to give them the sales training they need to work through the sales process and shorten the sales cycle. Getting positioned better is going to shorten your sales cycle almost always. In almost every case, if you are better positioned, you will shorten your sales cycle. Whether you win the deal or lose the deal, it will go faster if you are better positioned. And either one outcome is good, because if I'm going to lose it, I want to lose it and keep moving on and get to some other stuff that I'm going to win. So our goal is to get positioned to move the sale forward. So we don't put our sales reps in a good position to do that because we don't give them everything they need, and we don't insist or hold them accountable for learning about our industry, learning about their customers' industries, how those industries interact. We don't teach them how to care about the person that they're selling to and whether they win or not, whether they get what they want out of this. We don't teach them how to think about the customer's industry, the customer's goals, and the customer's customers. We're just not giving them that training, and we're not expecting it, and we're not showing them even any way to get that information. So this is why this idea of individual contributor in sales needs to just go away. We're a team. We should be learning all of these things together. We should be talking about them constantly. And then that helps us as we go out to our individual customers that we're responsible for, in our sales pipeline. But together we learn the industry. Together we share information we learn. Together we talk about, oh, I met with this surgeon the other day and his patients were having this outcome. And I was able to share with him how our product can change that outcome, and he will have happier patients, or she will have happier patients. So I just don't even think it's something people are thinking about. I think they think people need our products and services. I'm going to go ask them a few discovery questions, see if they're qualified, and then tell them how our product will work at their company.
It makes sense to me that we treat sales as probably more binary than what it actually is when you tie in that we're dealing with actual humans, as opposed to we're ticking a bunch of boxes and an algorithm is saying yes or no to the product or service. So with that, Alice, how do we take the leap from perhaps we've hit quota, perhaps we've crushed it, we're 300% over in your example there, and we're moving to a new sales role, but to get to the 300% quota, our positioning came from trial and error and being beat up every day for 5 years until the thought process, the patterns became recognizable. How do we, in, say, Sam, the salesperson, they've just moved from that 300% quota to a new role in a new industry, in a new space. We know that we need to do some data collection on the priorities and the wants and needs of our customers and their customers. We've done a bit of data collection. If there's a process, what is step 2 in the end goal of being able to position our product to be able to qualify people quickly and to be able to get a yes, no from them to speed up the sales cycle?
I think step 2 in getting positioned, if you've got all the knowledge that you need, then you definitely need to share it with the right people in the right way. So a lot of people are using social media, email, and the phone. We're cold calling people, we're cold emailing people, we're cold connecting with people. Some people are using trade shows and networking events. That's great too. But we have to build that awareness. So we've got all this information now, and we're dying to share it and ask questions, and we're well armed. But we have to then get our foot in the door. We have to get somebody to respond to us and to be interested. So there's a couple of things here that are really key, and I think we're missing them a lot of times. One of them is, I think we see the statistics all the time, but we don't follow them. It takes 8 to 12 attempts to get someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know your brand, doesn't know anything about you, to respond to you. And most salespeople, frankly, just give up too easily. Same with the marketing. They're not staying in front of these people. It truly takes a lot of good messaging, a lot of attempts. Now, I like an approach that uses all of them. I like to use social media, networking, trade shows, emails, phone calls. I like to combine all of those things. And what is important, though, is that you have a good message. So I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and I was just, appalled because an SDR or BDR said it's just flatly rude of these senior executives not to respond to them, and that senior executives should have the courtesy to respond to their so-called individualized sales messages. Well, first of all, you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know what's important to me, you don't know how I struggle each day, what my challenges are, whether my mother just died, whether I'm about to be fired, whether my company's just, imploded, or whether my company's doing great, but the pressure's still tremendous because they want more. You don't know what's going on in my life, and you're sending me emails along with 500 other people every day. Of course, I'm not going to respond, right? And if you didn't send me anything of value or anything that would catch my attention, I'm definitely not going to respond. Same with your phone calls, same with your social media attempts, all of that. So I think it's because we don't have this depth of knowledge, we send what we think are customized emails to people, and they don't get any response because we really don't know them. A really good friend of mine, Heather Morgan, she owns a company called SalesFolk. She's the founder of that company. I highly recommend that anyone out there trying to get themselves positioned in the marketplace with buying influences that don't know you, read her book about her ebook about how to do cold emails more humanly. She explains exactly how you follow somebody, get to know them, and how you use what you find to send better messages to them and get a much higher response rate. So one, we have to try more times. It is our responsibility as a salesperson to get our great information in front of these people and get them interested. So we build that awareness. We have to try more times, but we have to have good information to put in front of them, not just an email that says we do this and we do that, or a phone call. So I think that's probably just the second thing that we have to think about. We have all this knowledge. Now, how are we going to approach these people so we can get positioned with them and get on a call where we actually get to talk with them about the things we want to talk with them about? And I think another piece of that is we're treating these complex sales like a transaction. We send people after one person to try to get them on the phone or get them to respond to an email. And that person may or may not be the right person and may not have the budget. There are, as we know, according to all the research, 6 to 8 people involved with a sale these days. So we have to surround these decision makers and go after all of them simultaneously in one company. So we have, 6 to 8 people that we're working on getting interested at this one company. Maybe 1 or 2 of them will be interested, maybe the others won't, but all we need is 1 to get interested, and then they'll help the others and bring them along.
Heather was on the show recently. As we're chatting here, we record over Skype these episodes just as a background insight for the audience. She's actually just messaged me, chasing me when her episode is going to be published, just for context for you as well. So I'll link to Heather's episode in the show notes of this episode as well over at salesmanpodcast.com. She's a legend, great resource for a lot of this. So from what you just said then, Alice, are we potentially doing harm by having a series of SDRs spamming the heck out of our potential? If we talk about ourselves perhaps in this instance as an account manager, if we have SDRs spamming the crap out of the C-suite, just trying to get any kind of response just by, there's no other word other than spam, is that hurting the opportunity that we have to do business with them in the future because it's positioning us as a low value company to work with? Is that I don't know if there's data to that. I don't know if it's too early in having SDRs, BDRs, and the roles separated to dive into it. But is that a potential threat to someone who is an account manager having an SDR sending spammy emails trying to book appointments for them?
Well, this is very controversial, and I'm going to tell you my opinion. I think we are absolutely hurting ourselves. We're not differentiating ourselves in any way. That's number one. So you fall into the pool with all the other fools who are out there sending bad email and leaving bad voicemail messages and spamming me on LinkedIn. So do you want to be in that pile, or do you want to be in the pile where you're differentiated from everyone else? So that's just my first question to all of you who are doing this. Where do you want to be positioned in the marketplace? As someone who's spamming everyone, or as someone who cares about individuals and cares about their goals and cares about whether they get what they want? So I think that's just the first question. Now, does email work? Does cold calling work? Do these spammy LinkedIn messages work? Well, to some degree they do. And so clients will tell me that, well, we got a really big deal doing this. Well, you have 10 SDRs sitting there. You got one really big deal, 10 SDRs, one really big deal. I'm having trouble with those odds. So what I want to do is increase the odds. So the number one way to get positioned off the gate really well is to get an introduction. And so I think we always forget that. And my good friend, Joanne Black, who wrote No More Cold Calling and Just Pick Up the Damn Phone, she is constantly out there saying, please stop cold calling, stop cold email, stop cold contacting, and get introductions. Well, that's controversial too, because a lot of my other friends will say, well, cold calling works and emailing works and all of those things, but isn't it easier to have an introduction? Someone saying, hey, this guy Will is really cool. You should talk to him. He really benefited one of my clients, or he really benefited me. Give him the time. Wouldn't you rather have 10 of those a day than 100 cold calls? So we have to really think about what we're doing. And I think that's part of the problem in business in general today. We don't stop often enough and think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what the outcomes are, and how we can get better outcomes. So we continue to pound the phones and pound the email, which is drowning everyone in more muck. So, my opinion is let's figure out an easier way to do this. There are people out there in the marketplace that need and want your products and services. Let's figure out the best way to get that information to them so they have a conversation with us. And if we're doing it right, once they have a conversation with us, we're going to have a high percentage chance that they're going to do business with us. Not everyone, but at least they'll be considering us in the mix. But we've got to have those first conversations. So if we think about what's the easiest possible way to get positioned to make a sale, it's with an introduction. So why not start there? But how does an SDR do that? They have no relationships with these people. You can't get an introduction if you don't have a relationship. And so I think, in my opinion, we're kind of doing it all in a crazy way. We've got senior salespeople who have relationships and know these people and could easily be getting referrals and are not. And then we have SDRs, BDRs, MDRs out there cold contacting people and not really getting much of a result. So, it's controversial, but there are better ways to do it. And that's what I do. I help people figure out how to get positioned for a complex sale, how to shorten their sales cycle and make it easier.
As you say this, first off, we're on the same wavelength. What you're describing is how I humbly, because I'm no expert in any of this. The audience know this. I don't proclaim to be an expert whatsoever, but I'm speaking with people like yourself 3 or 4 times a day, pretty much every day, and I've been doing that for the past 2-3 years now. So hopefully some of these insights stick over time, and I'm sucking them in via osmosis. But I see these SDRs, and they're only doing what they're told. And I couldn't do that role. I couldn't sit in an office all day making calls, sending email. I just couldn't do it. So I've mad respect for these individuals. But I see if you're going after VPs of sales, VPs of marketing, whatever the person is, there's probably only, depending on what the industry, 1,000, 5,000 people that you can go after. You can burn through that amount of people pretty damn quick if you're using email automation, if you're using auto dialers, if you're just spamming the heck out of them. And I feel like there's going to be a company that's going to come along at some point. Again, no data on this. It's all anecdotal and all kind of the processing and the pattern recognition that goes on as I go through these interviews, Alice. But I see at some point there's going to be another Aaron Ross moment, another Salesforce explosion moment of there's going to be a company that's going to build a team. Maybe they're called SDRs, maybe they're not, but they're essentially just going to be vertical experts in the industry. They're going to be hyper connected. They're going to go to every single trade show, every event, every conference. Their job is just going to be to make introductions, to add value, not do anything weird. Not they don't perhaps even have a quota. Perhaps you're hiring, rather than people straight out of college or university, you're hiring the 55-year-old salesperson who's super well known within the space, but doesn't want the stress and the pressure, doesn't want to travel anymore. They want an office role. Or you're hiring someone who's just had a kid, but they're well connected and they want to be closer to home and they want to be office based, whatever it is. I feel like there's going to be an Aaron Ross moment of you're going to hire 10, 15 people like this. They're going to bring in so many leads, somewhat organically, somewhat through referrals, somewhat through just good connections, somewhat through understanding trigger events in the market and being able to relay these then to the more traditional salespeople who can follow them up. I genuinely think that's going to be something that's going to, it's not as scalable for a startup, for example, but in the complex B2B world of people doing, I was only ever a B player in sales, and I was doing deals from minimum of kind of like 50 grand to a couple of million. And I had no real sales training in the first couple of medical device sales roles that I had. It was only for reading books and getting mentored from people internally. And I feel like that was how I won and had somewhat success in the medical device world of I was curious about the product. I'd go in, not try and sell anyone, just chat to the surgeons. And all my deals came from people coming to me. So you've said it a couple of times, and to use your word, the phrase that you used was to make selling easier. I feel like that is what we should be aiming for, right? It seems so obvious, but then is it not implemented? Because to get that know, like, and trust, to become quote unquote an expert within your vertical, to be able to write insightful emails rather than just spammy emails, which makes sales easier after the fact when you have people coming to you. Is it difficult? Are we not implementing this because it's difficult up front and we're looking for a magic bullet and we're looking for something that's going to solve the sales problem this quarter? I'm talking both from individuals here as well as sales management and sales leadership. Are we looking for the quick solution rather than you get someone new on board and you get them to spend 6 months just networking and then they start selling? And is there really an upside to that more so than have them just spam for 6 months?
I believe that it's longer on the front end, but shorter on the back end. And in the end, it still shortens your sales cycle if you do it properly. But I do believe that there is tremendous pressure on companies today from their investors and the other stakeholders to hit very high numbers. People want rapid exponential growth, and it's just not realistic. And we know, again, from all the statistics that companies are not hitting their forecasts. Salespeople are at about 50% of their quota for the most part. And there are some superstars out there, but mostly people are not hitting the numbers that are projected for them. So that tells us something right there. I think that company leaders really need to take a good look at what they're doing. Many company leaders are not trained in sales. They've never done sales. They don't really understand sales. What they understand is finance and driving numbers. They understand investors and they understand other really important things, but they don't understand how that affects sales or how to make sales work the way they want it to. And so if the leaders would learn more about sales and understand what drives sales and how it works, I think we would be in a better place. And marketing and sales together could go out and understand the marketplace better to figure out what the realistic numbers are that could be hit. And we could just start there. And then once we have some reality, I think we could think about what is a better way to do what we're doing. I mean, we have two choices, the more button and the easy button. Which one do you want to push? More, or easy? I want to push the easy button. I want the sales to be high quality sales with customers for life, not customers for once. And I want my company to care about the people that it serves and the people that they serve. So if we start from that place, we can absolutely learn what we need to do, hold people accountable for that, and we can make sales easier because we come from a whole different place to start with. If you just want to do it by the numbers, we're going to hit this number, we're going to have 10 SDRs or 20 SDRs or 100 SDRs, make 100 calls a day, and we only expect them to get one appointment a week out of that, and just multiply it like that. Well, good luck. It's not working. It's not working anywhere. There are companies that can get you more, they do live dials and they can get you more conversations, but where do the conversations go from there? So if you're starting from, I don't know you, I don't know your company, I don't know your product. So it's like, hi, you don't know me, you don't know my company, you don't know my product, you want to buy something? It just doesn't work. You wanted to have an appointment with my sales rep? No, I don't know who you are. So marketing has to do a better job of getting you out there in the marketplace. Salespeople have to be better marketers and get embedded with the people that they want to talk to and build relationships to. And then, we can shorten the sales cycle for sure, and we can hit better numbers. But it's just corporate America is still operating in a very old selling way. They're not using modern selling, and they're not helping their salespeople be better sellers. They're just kind of doing a numbers approach, and it just simply isn't working.
I'm going to go totally off the rails here and wrap up the show up in a totally different direction than what I wanted to, because I'm going to have you back on, Alice, because I wanted to get into what the positioning looks like on paper, what it looks like in a meeting, how we differentiate ourselves versus the competition when someone throws an objection about the competition straight at us face to face. So we'll have you back on if you're up for it for that on another occasion. But something was pulling at me as you were saying that, and this might date this show when it happens in the not too distant future. But are we faced with targets that are ambitious at best and more than likely just ridiculous, and we're being pushed for hyper growth? Is it just because we're in a really good spot within the economy? And where I'm going with this is, clearly there's some kind of economic downturn coming next kind of year, 18 months, 3 years. Nobody really knows. Are we, when that happens, are we going to be faced with a reset, a big button, a big plunger being reset, in that at that moment, hypergrowth probably isn't as useful as representing and supporting the customers that we have and getting the most out of them and just surviving? Is that something that might even benefit the sales industry if this big crash comes coming down?
Well, I think once again, the company leaders need to step back and figure out what they're doing and what they really want. Do you want hyper growth or sustainable growth? Well, if I'm with a private equity firm or a venture capital firm that wants to flip me, I need hyper growth because that's what they demand, right? But is that sustainable? And I've seen so many situations where these companies do get this hyper growth, this rapid exponential growth, and then they get flipped, and then that's it. They've kind of stalled at that point. So do we want sustainable growth? Do we want a customer for life? Or do we want a customer for once? We really have to think about that. And if there is a downturn in the economy, yeah, of course, it will make us pause and look to see what we're doing. But I think we've gotten a bit greedy in corporate America, or maybe we've always been greedy. I'm not really sure. How much is enough? My goodness, it seems crazy at this point. But we need to have our company leaders looking at what they really want to build, what place they really want to take, how they want to affect the people who work for them, their community, the people they sell to, and really have more heart in that. And then we can build companies that are sustainable and that have sustainable growth on an upward curve that's not crazy growth, chaotic growth, that just is a burn and churn for their SDRs and their salespeople, and people are just coming and going. We just have to decide as company leaders, what do we really want, and what is best for our company, and what is best for the marketplace, and what is best for our customers and their customers. And companies who just don't care and are just focused on selling product, they're probably going to continue doing the same old thing. But for companies who start to look up and look around and say, wow, I want my company to last a long time, I want it to be more sustainable, they will look for better ways, and they will change.
The reason I asked that, and we'll wrap up with this, Alice, is that if there's a huge crash, if companies change the way that they do things, if there's a push for survival rather than a push for consistent and constant growth, it's going to be the salespeople who have done all this now, who have that know, like, and trust, who have customers that want to work with them specifically. They're going to have crazy leverage of moving from company to company, or kind of bringing their customers along, even if they don't physically bring them over, having that mind share, having those relationships and being able to leverage them to do other deals, different deals, even just as you said then, being able to sell to the same customer over and over as businesses change and develop, and rather than just do, as you said before, more rather than easy. From a high level, it's always easier to sell to customers that you've sold to before versus going for new ones. So that more button might disappear over time, and the relationships that salespeople have become super leverageable as you go kind of easy on that front. Do you know what? There's loads to think out with this one. Again, we'll have you back on to, I feel like we've only scratched the surface. So that's my fault as an interviewer and being too curious about the outer edges of this conversation. So I apologize for that. But I think there's been some practical elements to this show as well. And with that, Alice, I've got one final question that I ask everyone that comes on the show. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give her to help her become better at selling?
I think I'd give myself the same advice that I'm giving everyone here. When I was younger, I was more focused than most probably on the results that my customer would get from using my product or service. But I don't think I was focused on really knowing their industry, their concerns, their goals, their customers' industries, and what their customers care about. So I would tell myself, go deeper, understand more before you speak, before you share, before you do anything. Really understand, bring all that knowledge in and figure out the best way to use that knowledge. I mean, I've always been a lifelong learner, and I think salespeople must be lifelong learners. But I don't think as a younger person, I really understood how much it matters when I know more about you, how you'll win, what your world is like, and what you care about. And not only that, but what your customers care about. So I think that that's what I would tell my younger self.
Amazing stuff. Well, with that, Alice, tell us where we can find out more about you. Tell us a little bit about the blog, and we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, so you can find out more at aliceheiman.com. You can go to my blog, which is smartsalestips.com, and I share a lot of this advice there as well. And you can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm even on Snapchat, although I'm not really doing much there, but I'm happy to connect with you. Please send me a little message, though, and tell me that you heard me here on this podcast, and I'll connect with you, and I'm happy to share advice. I do want to say one final thing, which is if you want to read a book about getting yourself positioned better to make the sale, I'm going to boldly recommend a book that was written by my father and his partner, and it's called Strategic Selling. That book is all about positioning. And even today, I have never read a better book about getting positioned to make the sale. It simply is one of the best books I've ever read, even though I have to admit it was written by my father. So I want to share that book with everyone. Steve Heiman and Bob Miller wrote that book in the late 70s, and it still rings true today. If you want to get better positioned to make the sale, read Strategic Selling.
Perfect. Well, I'll link to the book, the blog, and everything else in the show notes to this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. I'll mention it for everyone watching. I don't know what the heck's happened with the screen behind me. That's just gone off, and that's never happened before. So that'll make everyone who's watching chuckle as they see my face as we go through the interview, trying to suss what's going on with that. But Alice, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for, and genuinely, I mean this, you have a broad knowledge on this. You're clearly a subject matter expert. I threw a whole bunch of questions at you that probably are slightly off tangent, and you came back with amazing answers for all of them. So I truly appreciate that. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.